Hello, dear Rava, and hello to anyone who might find themselves watching this rather curious exercise which is devoted to the history and the meaning of theatre. Well, the history, after all, is one thing which can be traced through a lot of scholarly works, but the meaning of theatre, this is a much more interesting subject. And as such, this little series of 15-minute videos is the natural continuation of an event which happened to me quite by chance a good many years ago. A play of mine called Magus was about to open in a theatre that had been once used as a theatre. Wasn't designed as such. It was designed as a pottery. A lovely little place in the woods, as I am now speaking to you from the Mount Overlook Wild Forest outside Woodstock. These were different woods, but nearby, and there a pottery had been built for the Birdcliff Guild, a famous gathering of artists of various kinds, and it had been used as a theatre by some quite eminent people. Joanne Woodward, the actress, started her career really there, but it had long since been abandoned. And when we found it, we were thrilled. And the little space there, was in many ways the inspiration for what followed, what I'm about to tell you. So the play that was about to be performed for the first time, we premiered a play called Magus, set in the 1580s in Prague, in the Prague of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, and gathered together in my imagination in Prague were a lot of remarkable characters who were alive at the time. The Magus himself, John Dee, Queen Elizabeth I's tutor, mathematics tutor and magical tutor in magic, and the young Shakespeare, and Miguel de Cervantes, the great author of the Quixote, who's there auditioning to run Rudolf II's army as a mercenary, as a soldier, which he, Cervantes, had been. So we were all getting a bit excited as half an hour before the opening moment arrived. The half, as it's called in British theatre, perhaps in American too, is actually 35 minutes before curtain up or lights up, and no sign of Miguel de Cervantes. Trey Kay, a wonderful actor, raconteur, journalist, supreme, had not arrived. Well, what to do? We got a phone call at last from him. He had been flagged down by the police as he drove from the other side of the Hudson River, and he would be there as soon as he could get there. Well, by now we had a house filling up. There's a kind of minstrels gallery there which was full. People were seated cross-legged in front of the little bank of rostra that we had, with seats, barely more than 100 people, but still a marvelous audience. And they were buzzing with anticipation, I suppose, only to find that it was me, dressed as Sir John Dee in a robe, who came out to speak to them, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to approach this matter of breaking the news for them that we would have to wait for one of our actors. And so instead of retreating swiftly after bringing my bad news, I thought I had better try and hold the stage. So I embarked on saying why I loved this little building, this room we were in, how much it meant to me, and how it had inspired me to conceive of a company to perform here in what had once and was now again a theatre, after, in my case, 30, 40 years of not working in the theatre, which was where I began. My theatre-going life began very early, since my parents were successful actors on Broadway in the late 1940s and early 1950s, and the first theatre I saw featured my parents. And thereafter, I did a certain amount of theatre at college and went on to direct and to write plays for the theatre for some years, but not for many years. I had been writing novels and scripts in the intervening time. I was very excited to be back at work in the theatre, and I thought perhaps what I should do was sing a hymn of praise to this structure and explain why I thought it was so wonderful, why I'd found it so inspiring. And in the course of doing so, because it was the size of many so-called black box theatres, auditoria, on campuses, on and off campuses, little places that when you go into them are indeed black boxes awaiting the inspiration that one could pour into the idea of light and people and decor and costumes and an audience, to bring it alive, because black boxes are, by their very nature, inert, dead between productions. But this place was already alive, this little theatre in the woods, former pottery in the woods. It had a fireplace. It had a wall of brick with a fireplace set into it on one side. It was wood and brick, and it exuded a human warmth, which was the legacy, I think, of its life, perhaps its life as a pottery, but certainly its life, previous life as a theatre, which was in those walls, and also in the lovely accident of the walls, part wood, part brick. No architect designing a small theatre would have come up with this strange but delicious arrangement. And so from the moment I stepped into it, I thought, oh my God, what a heavenly place. Oh, I must work here somehow. We'll do something. And so it was, and this was about to be born. So I spoke in praise of the building that we, the audience and I, were in, and moved on from there to speak of what theatre is, what it needs, and what it doesn't need. It doesn't need much. It needs, it's open to question whether it needs anything at all. And the things that I would, during my lifetime, have thought of as necessary, light and the human voice and the human form, are not absolutely necessary. You can probably do without light, and there's a famous play written for a blackout in which the joy of the play is people bumping into each other and the audience enjoy the darkness, where the actors, the characters, are not enjoying it one bit. So even light is not absolutely necessary. The voice, I dare say, I don't see why that's absolutely necessary. There are mime plays which work wonderfully without the voice. And the human form, well, who's to say? Some form or other, or maybe none. Maybe just something in a space not requiring the form or the voice or even light. However, I'd always thought of it as if not requiring, then being sufficiently composed by space and light and the human form, even if it's only one, and the voice. So I praised these essentials and the inessentials which have been brought to theatre over the centuries, and then discarded by many great writers and even theorists like Bertolt Brecht, who would say that the decor was of no importance. A signpost saying China was sufficient to take you to China. The important thing was the storytelling, and even the acting, in Brecht's view, should not be representative of impersonation. It was to be only storytelling. So this is something that I hope to talk about in the coming videos. But I spoke of the beginnings of theatre, possibly in the Osiris rituals of ancient Egypt, where the great story of the murder of Osiris by his brother Set and the dismemberment of Osiris gathered together by his wife to be Isis, and who between them, even after Osiris is dead, although he's been gathered together, except possibly not for the penis, which was thrown by Set into the River Nile and swallowed by a fish, which is said to account for what was understood in early days as the Egyptian distrust of eating fish, in fact, refusal to eat fish. So Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris, is said to have been conceived by some as in a lightning flash, or one conception in which Isis became a bird and somehow copulated with Osiris's corpse. Some very theatrical things, if in fact the temple ritual in which the death and reconstruction of Osiris was performed included such things. We believe there was a temple rite, and it's interesting how the story of Osiris, Set, and Isis and Horus, which is the founding myth, the central myth in some ways of ancient Egyptian culture, is not entirely different from the founding myth of our Western theatre, the founding play in many ways, which is the Oresteia by Aeschylus, which climaxes in the founding of the city, metaphorically, by the way in which the city manages to incorporate the impulse to vengeance, murder and its consequences, which also feature in the Osiris myth, but which in the Oresteia take the form of finding a way to prevent a vendetta from being created, as it would have done in more ancient Greece, in Homeric Greece, where a court, the idea of a court, features on the shield of Achilles that we meet in the Iliad, but is brought into being. And after all, the Iliad is not written at the time, the presumed time of the Trojan War, but much later. And that idea of a court is realized in the play The Oresteia, and its presiding judge, Athena, goddess of wisdom and of war, makes a judgment which allows humanity to go forwards by the means of a jury and the resolution of a vendetta. So it is our theatrical founding myth, which we will talk about later, in many ways, and how we get from ancient Egypt to ancient Greece. Would that we knew. But there is a theory which doesn't connect up with ancient Greece at all, although it may be that, in fairness to theatre, we ought to locate its origins there. However, the development of theatre in ancient Greece is something that I will talk about in my next little talk. Not that we truly know, but there are some theories and some images that are pleasant to think about. Thank you for staying with me for these first 15 minutes. I shall be back with you soon, or whenever you please. Goodbye.